Clemson Tigers were 10-4 last year, and they're looking to improve as they're more experienced, perhaps more talented thanks to transfer portal additions, and maybe have better coaching with a new defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, joining the team. And last year, that 10-4 record, certainly an ACC championship season, is far from a failure, but it left some to be desired as the schedule was a little weak. Their only victory against a team with 8 or more wins was against SMU in that ACC championship game. So if they're to win more games against what you'll see is a much tougher schedule, it's going to take some improvement. So what am I predicting? That's what we're going to talk about in this video, and let's dive right in. I'm going to go through each and every game. I'm going to tell you who I pick, a little bit about why, and we'll see where they net out in the regular season. I'll have a separate video, perhaps even a live stream with my playoff picks. But let's get right to it and start with LSU. One of the games of the year, certainly for Clemson, but honestly across all of college football, this is one of the best games that'll be on tap. It's a night game in Clemson's Death Valley, opening weekend, week 1. And there's a lot of hype around it, but LSU has lost a ton of talent. They lost 7 players to the NFL draft. That's the 4th most of any team. In particular, they lost Will Campbell on the offensive line. He went 4th overall to the Giants. And with that, they also lost Emory Jones, Miles Frazier, and Garrett Dellinger, all off that offensive line. So this is a almost completely rebuilt offensive line. Now they've got the number 1 transfer class in all of college football with 18 transfers. And some of those are on the offensive line, most notably Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech and Josh Thompson from Northwestern. I'd expect both of them to start. And maybe that's simple plug and play. Some young guys are ready. And if so, the one kind of secret or not so secret weapon they have is Garrett Nussmeier, arguably the top, if not second, best quarterback in the country coming back. They leaned on him heavily last year, almost to the extent that Syracuse leaned on Kyle McCord. They leaned on him a lot because they didn't have much of a running game. They're hoping to have more of a running game, but they're going to need that offensive line to hold up if they got to rely on Garrett Nussmeier. If they're going to get the most out of their quarterback, they really need that offensive line to hold up. They've got tons of talent. LSU can win with a lot of different guys as their head coaches, as they've done, as they've proven in the past. They're super talented. They've got kind of unlimited upside, but to come into Clemson at night, your first game with a pretty heavily new team, hasn't played together yet, that's a lot to ask. And I think Peter Woods, Will Helt, TJ Parker, DeMonte Capehart, Stephylan Green, that's a tough group to go against with this new offensive line. I think it might be too much too early for LSU, especially on the road, especially at night. This is Clemson's probably their last chance to host an SEC team in Death Valley, not counting South Carolina, for maybe over a decade. We've got a 12-year agreement starting the year after next with Notre Dame. So you're probably not going to have Notre Dame, South Carolina, and another SEC team. So this could be one of the last really great non-conference hoping games that isn't Notre Dame or South Carolina. So take it in. I think it's a Clemson win, and I have Clemson starting 1-0. After that, Clemson will host Troy. A little bit of a sandwich game between 2 tough ones. Troy was 4-8 last year. I don't think they're a major threat. So can't overlook them, but I think this is a Clemson win, and Clemson's 2-0. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. It really helps out a lot, so I'd appreciate it if you could take a second and do that. Moving on, there's another tough game, and that's Georgia Tech. Clemson will go to Atlanta and have to battle Georgia Tech. Clemson has a losing record in Atlanta all time. And this is not going to be a gimme. I'm pretty high on Georgia Tech this year. If you haven't seen my top 25, that is out on the YouTube page. So go check out my top 25. I have Georgia Tech in there. 6th-year quarterback Haynes King. He played 3 years at Texas A&M. Now he's in his 3rd and final year at Georgia Tech. He's great. I think he's extremely underrated. He's, they say, a great college quarterback. I don't know what his NFL future is, but as a college player, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the ACC and maybe the country. And he's paired with Jamal Haynes, great running back. And they've got the Middle Tennessee transfer that some of you may remember, Keeneland Rutledge. He was a guy that Clemson wanted, not this offseason, but the one before, lost out in the transfer portal as the Middle Tennessee State guard. He goes to Georgia Tech and is an All-American, not all ACC, but All-American. So they're going to have a great running game. Ethan McKinney, whose family is my neighbors, full disclosure, but he is going to be a left tackle. He's back healthy. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be tough. This is a different different Georgia Tech team under Brent Key, and there'll be no easy wins against them, especially in Atlanta. The one thing, and it's a big thing, against them is that defense might not be any good. They lost their defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci. He goes to the NFL, to the Ravens. They were really bad before he got there. He seemed to turn things around pretty rapidly. Do they build on that, or do they regress back to where they were? The defense might not be good. They did not generate much of a pass rush last year. They went to the portal looking for defensive ends, grabbed 3, but none of them ranked that high. One of them is A.J. Hoffler, who struggled at Clemson last year. So I don't know about that defense, and I could see this being a tough one in Atlanta. I do have a lot of respect for Georgia Tech under Brent Key, but even if it is, I think it's a shootout Clemson win, if not a more comfortable Clemson win. So I've got Clemson starting 3-0 right there. And then you get into what I consider the easiest stretch of the year for Clemson. And that stretch begins as a 3-game stretch with a bye, an open date as part of it. And it begins with Syracuse. And I really like Coach Ferrum Brown. I think he's got that program heading in the right direction. But this year's likely to be a step back. They went 10-3 last year. They upset Georgia Tech, UNLV, who was actually favored and won 11 games by the year's end. They upset Pittsburgh, who had not collapsed totally at that point. They upset Miami and went 10-3 last year. And of course, that Miami win knocked Miami out of the ACC championship and put Clemson in. So we owe them a thanks for that. But last year, even more so than LSU with Garrett Nussmeier, they were so heavily quarterback dependent, and that's on Kyle McCord, who is now gone. He led all of FBS football in pass attempts. His top pass catchers are all gone. Trevor Pena transferred to Penn State. Others are in the NFL. So they've got a ton to replace. They also benefited from a relatively soft non-conference schedule last year. This year, they have a really tough schedule in the ACC, and they start the year against Tennessee. I think they lose that. I think they're going to struggle to get to bowl eligibility. If they prove me wrong, then I'll be even more impressed with Ferrum Brown than I already am. But I think this is a relatively easy home win against one of the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the conference. And so I think Clemson gets a win there. They take their open date on September 27th. And now we're in kind of the heart of what I think is their easiest stretch. Next up is North Carolina. Clemson's won 6 in a row in this series. They've won 9 out of 10. It's in Chapel Hill, and Coach Belichick's going to bring some level of buzz. They might even get off to a strong start. But I just don't. They had a decent transfer class, but they also lost even more in the portal. Some top teams picking some of their best players away. They don't have a marquee quarterback like they've had the past couple years. I think this could be a year where their record might not be too bad because the schedule's easy. They have one of the easiest schedules, easiest Power 4 schedules in the entire country. But I don't think this is going to be a particularly good UNC team. I think if it's going to work out for Bill Belichick in North Carolina, it's this year. They eke by some wins, and it looks okay against a soft schedule. They do some work in the portal. They do some work with the development, and next year they're actually good. I think that's kind of what you're hoping for if you're a UNC fan. After that, it's a trip to Boston College. Not necessarily an easy place to play, but not an overly raucous crowd. You got to respect them with Coach Bill O'Brien. He's at the Texans, at Penn State. He's a Boston guy. He's kind of there because his wife's from there. So they did really well to land him. But they brought in 14 transfers, and it's still only the 70th best transfer portal class. That might speak to the talent they're bringing in. They lost Thomas Castellanos. I know that's sort of by choice because they like their quarterback. They brought in a quarterback from Alabama. But I don't know. I just don't know that they have the talent to really be a serious threat. If Clemson plays even like a B- game, even on the road, Clemson should win, and that would push Clemson to 6-0. So have Clemson starting off really, really strong. After Boston College is a trip to Dallas to face SMU. This is an SMU team that took them to the brink last year in the ACC championship, an SMU team that came from the Power 5 and immediately was the best team in the ACC for the entire regular season before losing to Clemson and Penn State in the postseason. I'm pretty high on them generally. I love Kevin Jennings. I watched him play quite a few times and was super impressed with him pretty much every time. You got to remember, he was not the starting QB at the beginning of last season, so he kind of grew into that role. Really like this offense. I have a lot of belief in Rhett Lashley as an offensive mind and a head coach in general, but their defense lost all but 2 starters. And I just don't know that SMU, although I respect them a lot as a program, they're not Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama or even a Clemson in terms of high school recruiting. Their transfer portal class was nothing crazy. So I just don't know. We'll see, but it's going to be a lot of last year's backups rising up this year as first-time starters. Maybe they're ready. Maybe they have more depth than I'm giving them credit to, but I think that defense might be not quite as good as it was last year. And if so, I think Clemson wins. If it's a battle, it's a shootout, and I think Clemson can win that and reach 7-0. Then Clemson has another open date on October 25th, and now they're in between SMU. Now it's Duke. This is a really, really tough stretch for the Tigers, and this is a game I could absolutely see Clemson losing. After a bye, Clemson struggled since 2022. Clemson's 1-3 coming out of those open dates. They've lost to Louisville, Miami, and Notre Dame. They had a win last year against NC State when it was a double bye season. But they've lost every year at least one game after an open date. Now, you think with a better coaching staff this year, with Tom Allen, with Ben Boulware, with Thomas Allen, you think that's not a thing anymore, but until they prove otherwise, I'm still going to be a little bit worried about it. So I think this is a tricky spot. Duke has 11 starters coming back themselves. Chandler Rivers is a elite cornerback that comes back. That always makes things interesting. They lost their starting quarterback, but they believe they've upgraded by going out and spending big money in the transfer portal, getting Darian Mensah from Tulane. He comes in. They've got 2 open dates and with Georgia Tech sandwiched in between right before they play Clemson. So they should be well rested. They should be healthy. This absolutely could be a spot where Clemson drops the conference game. This might be one of the 2 or 3 spots that I'm most worried about, but I just can't pick Clemson to lose at home to Duke. Something that's not right. Coming out of an open day, you should be focused on this team that beat you the last time, that beat Cade Klubnik. They can't possibly look past Duke after that. I think Clemson is out there on homecoming, focused, ready to go. I think this is a Clemson win, although I am very worried about it, to be fair. Got to give them a lot of credit. I think they're a good program. So after Duke, it's Florida State. It's Florida State at home. Let's be honest, we have no idea what Florida State's going to be. Perfect regular season, not last year, but the year before. Then 2 wins last year. Do they level out in between? I think that's probably the case. I think it's both fun, interesting, and has a decent floor. Their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, coming from Boston College, and offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn coming from UCF. They were together at one point early in Castellanos' career. I think that's a pretty good fit. They're going to like the QB run, and if Tom Allen can't fix Clemson's defense, that'll eat him up. And Clemson will probably have a loss before this point if they really don't fix the defense, but you really have to have it fixed by this point. But I from what I'm hearing, the change in defensive coordinator is huge. I know we're putting a ton of stock into it being that huge, but from what I'm hearing with the players, the way there's a lot of accountability and the intensity we're hearing with Ben Boulware, I'm buying in. And if I'm buying in, this is a Clemson win because this is a better team with a better coaching staff. So I like Clemson to win this one too. Get to 9-0. That probably puts them in the top 3 or 4 in the country at this point, maybe even higher. They could be number 1 if they reach 9-0. And so this is a big spot. Now, Clemson, or the ACC, has always been good to Clemson about not sending them on the road on short weeks, but they're doing it here. But it's only one day. It's a Friday night at Louisville. Louisville, of course, came to Death Valley, beat Clemson by worse than the score looked at the end. It was honestly not super competitive, and it was not a very fun game. That was at night. Clemson will now go to Louisville at night and try to get revenge. Clemson is more talented, has the better roster. Louisville lost a lot of talent. They, of course, brought in a really good transfer class, top 25 transfer class that includes Southern Cal quarterback Miller Moss and Coastal Carolina defensive end Clev Lubin, who had 9.5 sacks last year. I think Louisville will be good. And what worries me is that Jeff Brom, he's a good coach, but he also is a big game coach. So his teams might drop games they shouldn't, like when they lost to Stanford immediately after playing Clemson. But even back to his Purdue days, they would get up and steal a win against a really great opponent. And that's scary on a weeknight in Louisville. That's a worry for sure. Last year, Isaac Brown ran for 151 yards, true freshman running back. He's a sophomore now. He had 1,173 rushing yards last year. He's a big game guy that you got to worry about. again, Clemson's rush defense has to be fixed at this point, or this is a loss. And if I'm picking Clemson to lose one game, you got LSU, you got that Duke game I talked about, and you have this one. I don't think Clemson is undefeated, so I think Clemson's going to drop at least one in the regular season, and I'm going to say this is the one. Clemson loses on the road at Louisville on a short week, close game against a big game coach, Miller Moss, maybe a big game quarterback, we'll find out, and Clemson is 9-1 at that point. So after that, Clemson comes home, they host Ferrum. Love the Ferrum, the Purple Paladins, great mascot, but this is a bad FCS team. This is what I consider a partial bye, and I'll take it because Clemson has South Carolina up next. Of course, South Carolina's won 2 out of 3 in the series, but Clemson has a pretty good win streak going in Columbia. South Carolina's got an offense with a lot of upside. Lenore Sellers at quarterbacks getting the hype that he deserves. He was not great against Illinois, but against Clemson, he had some heroics, and he was kind of a big game quarterback. He played well against some big opponents and led them to victory. They've got wide receiver Nick Arbor, who gave up track to focus on football. He's got a ton of potential as a wide receiver. They do lose Rocket Sanders, a running back who was a pretty key piece for them last year. I see that they will lean on Lenore Sellers, both in the run game and passing, obviously, at quarterback. They're going to lean on him a lot. They need him to play great if they're going to beat some of the tough teams they face in the SEC, and of course Clemson as well. And I think he's going to come through a couple times for them. I don't know if he comes through for them this time, though, and that is not a knock on him or South Carolina, but that defense has some downside. They lost 5 defensive players in the NFL in this last NFL draft. Clemson, as a whole team, only had 3 guys go, offense or defense. So this is just a roster cycle that's tough for them to recover from, losing so much on defense. And again, they're not a program like Georgia or Ohio State, where you lose a lot of guys. It's tough to immediately recover if you're not super, super elite high school recruiting and or through the portal. LSU is doing it through the portal. Schools like Ohio State try to do it through high school recruiting, but I just don't know that South Carolina's defense is going to be that good. And I don't know that I could pick Clemson to lose to them 2 in a row or two in a row, and I guess that'd be 3 out of 4. I think Clemson probably wins this one. I think Clemson's the better roster, and with Tom Allen, with Matt Luke, I think Clemson's a better coaching staff, the better program. I think Clemson closes out the year at 11-1. And with one ACC loss, that probably puts them in the ACC championship game, although that's not an absolute guarantee. It probably does. And with that, you'll see Clemson in my playoff predictions. I'm going to break it down. If you haven't already, find that video. It'll be breaking down every pick in the college football playoff along with the national champion. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and go Tigers. Thank you to our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, Ready Vets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.